Hello, this is Professor Jag, and this is Chapter 2. And Chapter 2 is a chapter on culture. Chapter 2 is a very significant chapter. The second part, actually, this is part 1, and part 2 is the chapter on race. Later, midway the semester, I believe. Now, Chapter 2, the culture chapter and the race chapter, one follows the other actually because these are two parts of one main discussion, and it deals with identity, not social necessarily, not political, uh, but cultural, more than racial. Now, many people get racial about who they are, and they first give an indication of who they are in terms of race. Other people actually put culture first when talking about their national identity, right? And then what they do is that they hyphenate their nationality. For example, Mexican American, and so on. And so these two are very interesting and important chapters. And what it is that Americans, a lot of Americans, I'm not sure if to say most, but I'll go ahead and dare to say most. Most Americans actually cannot have a discussion about culture without the implications of race, and it's true. And so, this chapter then is part 1, and we'll go ahead and cover it little by little. There are other interesting discussions that arise from culture. We'll go ahead and later talk about race again, and then politics, and later we have chapters that dedicate to these other topics independently, of course. So we start by saying that we have the definition for culture there on the first couple of slides. Is defined as all that human beings learn to do, to use, to produce, to know, and to believe as they grow to maturity and live out their lives in the social groups. Remember, we have this is a chapter 5 or chapter 6 on social groups. Beware, okay? To which they belong. In other words, to which they have identity, right? So we have to. The way we study culture is in two components, two parts, or two areas of culture: material culture, consisting and the tangible creations that a societal group group of people actually use every day for survival purposes. The computer, the car, the comb. I mean, Americans, our culture, the American culture, that is, and we are so how do you say dependent on technology, right? And that's one characteristic of our material culture. Then we have non-material culture, the totality of knowledge. Religion. Well, that varies among groups, right? We also have what is it? Science, sociology, for example. Rites of passage, rituals that we share within our cultural group, or groups, should I say? But etc. Okay, and so these are the two components of culture, the two actually encompass to give people a cultural identity. In the following couple of slides, I actually give you examples, of what material culture. I give you little pictures and like cartoons, and so I use a lot of. Let me go ahead and say that I'm a fanatic when it comes to cartoons. I like to use a lot of cartoons and pictures, and when I teach this class face to face, I actually include these, and we have a good time, me and my students, and I hope you are having a good time with me. Now, I know you get to hear from me, and I don't get to hear a lot from you. Okay, but it's just the way this works. I don't mind. I love it. But you get to hear the professor at least one or two times during the week. Now, make it enjoyable. I love it again. But I'm not sure about you not having this face-to-face interaction, right? Interaction. There you go. Chapter 4. So pretty much a lot of our discussion, I like to go back and link chapter to chapter, like I did right now with the race chapter, with the politics chapter, and the group chapter. The socialization chapter. But the talk we're having here about culture, we like to say that for all cultural groups, there is a symbolism, right? Culture is very symbolic, right? And several components of symbolic culture, or non-material culture, are norms, values, folkways, mores, language, and in a cultural group, these components have to be agreed and shared by the group. And again, we're talking about identity, right? So this is where we share and we share and maintain a cultural, how do you say, identity, but also understanding. Yeah, also understanding. I'll give you an example. Whenever I go to Mexico, to Tijuana, for example, and I go to Tijuana, and my appearance is I'm Latino, right? No doubt about it, right? I'm not white. I'm not black. I'm not Oriental. I'm not. But I am Latino, and so when I go to Tijuana, for example, and people see me, they don't really say much. I'm just dressed casual, jeans, maybe a shirt and boots, maybe, or just whatever. Yeah, and I go to a taco stand and say, "Quiero dos tacos." And people automatically, they see me, and some of them may comment and say, "You're not from around here." Like, how do you know I'm not from around here? I speak very very good Spanish, and but they figure that out. So language in this case is one of those important components. Do you understand? It's a very important component because it's sort of like since we're talking about sharing a lot of these characteristics about culture, language is a giveaway. I mean, you can speak Spanish, you can speak any other language, but if you're not part of the culture, sort of like 100% part of the culture, in my case, being that I am so-called Mexican American, I'm not. I wasn't born in Mexico. I don't know much about the politics of Mexico. I'm not. I don't reside in Mexico. I love Mexico. I mean, I think it's a beautiful country in terms of the culture, not in terms of the politics necessarily. But take that back. I'm not here to insult any given government or anybody. Let's just be careful, all right? But definitely, I love the culture. I love the food, the gastronomy. That is right. A lot of it. I like it. I love it. And but the language. Then going back to the language, they figured me out, and they know that I'm not from around. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, you're not from around here. We know you're pocho. That's what they call me. Pocho. It's sort of like sort of like a slur. In other words, you're Mexican American white boy, so to speak, right? So I just go. Yeah, I just don't make it a big deal out of it. I just as, I feel unaccepted and unwelcome many times when they do that because they actually do mean it. You're not from around here. You're not one of us, and it's okay. I'm here to just to visit this beautiful country and to enjoy and to try to help people, perhaps sometimes, right? And so these must be shared and agreed by the group. That's what the only thing that I'm seeing. But I have a question for you. Why is language the most important of the five components that I just mentioned? Why will you think? Well, I mean, I gave you the answer in the next couple of slides, right? Because thanks to language, we pass our beliefs, values, expectations, and so on from one generation to the next. Without language, how will you do that? Right? The language then is extremely symbolic, but extremely important for the survival of the culture. No language will not, then no, not a very well-defined culture. You understand? Look at the American culture and look at all these other influences that come and do modify the culture, right? Continue to modify it. So this is one thing you have to understand in terms of how you measure the culture, right? And so culture again is very important. Is one of the things that people make a big deal out of it. I actually don't mind. I like to share, but people are like that. They're very nationalistic, very cultural. Many. And it's okay, I guess, right? It's not a problem. I'm not saying it is one either, right? So when it comes to language, we're talking about meaning, right? In reality, and Safir and Worf, two scientists, actually developed a hypothesis that it's a hypothesis of linguistic relativity. Okay, and what they're saying is that culture carries meaning. I mean, language carries meaning. You have a couple of examples there of the different interpretations and definitions for given terms like rise and love, for example, right? And the point they're making here is that language carries meaning. So, in other words, a culture, right? Language being one of the components, meaning. Do you understand? Just like all the culture, a given culture, any culture you could go ahead and think about or mention. The culture it lives a reality that is like carried, that is shared, and that is expressed through language. Ain't that beautiful? It's great, right? Look at our culture, for example, our American culture. Look at the diversity that we have, and at the same time, how is it? A very a culture that is very influenced, and very easy to influence by outside influences, right? Yeah. And since we're talking about the American culture, and not that I'm hesitant, but I have a little test for you. Is the you know I have a slide here. This slide, I have the many components or aspects, characteristics of American culture. Can you go ahead and cover them all? If I were to ask you a question of what is American culture, will you be able to go ahead and identify this? I developed this slide, and I give it to my students, and my students go, "Whoa!" Suddenly they don't know what to say, right? What about sports? If I were to be a Japanese student and I'm visiting your country, you're an American, and I'm asking about these characteristics or aspects about your culture because I want to study your cultures, especially your language. Well, talk to me about religion. What is American? What is religion in American culture? What about government and television, and media, technology? How about the family unit? Do you understand what I'm asking? What I'm talking about? Race, ethnicity. Suddenly, it's an implication when it comes to the culture. What about gastronomy? What is American food? I mean, for Mexicans, for example, given that I have a background, my parents were born in Mexico. Tacos. I mean, enchiladas. And my wife was born in Mexico, and she does a great mole, which is like a chicken barbecue. It's beautiful. I mean, great. It's wonderful, right? It's a delicacy. So, like, we have all these aspects of culture, and it's important to discuss them with great respect, of course. We don't want to go ahead and be offensive to nobody, nor other people to be offensive either, right? Be careful, okay? And you see the umbrella that I have there, or actually say, the umbrella, the top shield of the umbrella, the top part, that's the American culture, and we have all these other subcultures. So it's important to recognize that, yeah. It's important to recognize that ethnicity is not culture. We have the American culture, we have ethnic groups, right? Like Mexican Americans and so on, right? African Americans and so on. It's good, it's good, it's good, it's not bad. What I'm saying is that is the American culture, and we have all these subcultures under it that make the culture sort of like enrich the culture, yeah, but also modify the culture. Do you understand that? I mean, it is important also to discuss the influences to the culture, how the culture is modified over time. Social problems affecting having an effect on the culture. For example, the pop culture itself defies the traditions and values of the previous culture or generation of people. The fashions, fads, social movements, immigration, other social problems that actually do affect the culture, maybe like war, etc. Family problems, music, and folklore. So we have all these other characteristics, aspects of life that do affect the culture, especially one as vulnerable as the American culture. Easy to change and easy to modify or even alter. And so, moreover, there's this sentiment among Americans and among people overall in the world known as ethnocentrism. And with ethnocentrism, like people actually use their culture. Sometimes they use it to measure other cultures, other groups of people. And they measure their behavior, they measure how they do things, they measure how they behave, for example, how they interrelate among themselves. So ethnocentrism is a very important concept here. And from culture, from the ethnocentrism, we actually get a cultural shock. And a culture shock would be more like people reacting to the ways and to the lifestyles of other people. It's very frequent in the United States, provided that we have a lot of diversity. And it's important also to discuss and to analyze, to study. Finalizing this Chapter 2 presentation, I actually have two questions, two curiosities. And I'm sorry, but my background, I have two children, my girl, my boy. They're just kind of a little bit loud today. They're happy, and it's good. I love them with all my heart. Sorry for that. And but it's, what is the relationship between ethnocentrism and racism? Can a racist person be racist without being ethnocentric? And so are these two related? How is non-material culture ritualistic? What are some of our rites of passage? Going back to the slide where I actually had American culture, and if you're able to go ahead and describe it overall, it's an important assignment. It's not an assignment per se. You don't have to write one. Anyways, this is it. I thank you for being here for Chapter 2. This is Professor Jack. Thank you. Bye-bye.